story we have been following throughout the past 2 days surrounds the superstar herself, Caitlin Clark, the WNBA star, the Indiana Fever star, Caitlin Clark. She's going to miss all the action on the court.
Caitlin Clark gets hurt, and guess what? Your demand vanishes because people ain't going to pay up to see these athletes that are ungrateful that their sport's growing. People aren't paying up for that. And we are here, right here. The tickets for this game, for this All-Star game, they've dropped by 50%.
What was supposed to be Caitlin Clark's coronation week in Indianapolis has turned into an absolute nightmare for the WNBA. The city had gone all in, plastering a massive 34-story mural of Clark on the side of the JW Marriott. They were expecting record-breaking crowds, booming tourism revenue, and a celebration for the ages. But instead, they got rows of empty seats and a fan base furious enough to boycott the All-Star game altogether. And now, the big question hanging in the air: how did the league manage to turn its biggest star's homecoming into a financial disaster? And what did Commissioner Kathy Engelbert finally say about the refereeing mess that overshadowed All-Star Weekend? The answers reveal everything wrong with how the WNBA is handling the very players that are driving its recent success. Let us know in the comments if you think the league will ever figure it out. Let's get into it. When you land in Indianapolis, there's no missing it. The giant banner of Caitlin Clark covering the JW Marriott is jaw-dropping. 34 stories tall, making it the largest banner ever installed on the building. It even beats the massive NCAA bracket graphic from 2021. This one stretches across 113,000 square feet and says, "From downtown, in my town." It was supposed to be a defining moment. Who better to represent Indy than the face of the WNBA? Caitlin Clark herself. The city spent months prepping for what was hyped as the biggest WNBA weekend in history. A replica All-Star court was installed at the airport. Local businesses loaded up on inventory and brought in extra staff. Gainbridge Fieldhouse sold out within hours. Ticket prices skyrocketed, $121 just to get in, with resale averages hitting $262. Courtside seats were going for thousands, breaking all-time records according to TickPick. And then, everything collapsed. On July 17th, the Caitlin Clark injury news dropped. A groin strain, she was out. And just like that, the dream turned into a disaster. You could literally watch the ticket market crash in real time. Prices plummeted from $262 to $64 in just hours, a 75% drop. Sellers panicked. Resellers who thought they'd struck gold were now stuck with worthless inventory. The get-in price dropped from $121 to $65, and even at that price, tickets weren't moving. People didn't want them. Social media was full of frustrated fans canceling plans and demanding refunds. "I only bought these to see Caitlin Clark." One user said, "She's not playing, I'm out." This wasn't a slow decline. It was an economic meltdown playing out online for everyone to see. This wasn't just about losing one player. This was about what her absence revealed. The WNBA was seeing in real time just how much value Caitlin Clark brings. And this isn't the first time it's happened. Back in May, when Clark missed regular season games with a quad injury, road ticket prices crashed then too. The Washington game dropped by 47%. Chicago fell by 71%. But this time it wasn't just any game, it was the All-Star game in her hometown during the most hyped weekend of the year. And the drop was historic. Demand didn't dip, it fell off a cliff, and the consequences weren't limited to ticket sales. The entire city felt the blow. Gainbridge Fieldhouse, which had sold out nearly every Fever game for 2 years straight, was now facing the very real possibility of its first non-sellout of the season. Vendors who had spent thousands stocking up on All-Star gear were now staring at losses. Restaurants and hotels bracing for a tourism boom were seeing cancellations pile up. The economic ripple effect spread fast through downtown Indianapolis. Without Clark, the energy was gone. The fans weren't showing up, and the businesses were paying the price. This wasn't about missing one game. This was the league's wake-up call. Fans were sending a crystal-clear message. Caitlin Clark is the reason they're tuning in, buying tickets, and spending money. No other WNBA player has ever shifted demand like this. When other stars miss games, prices don't collapse. The league didn't want to admit it, but the All-Star Weekend exposed a hard truth. This season's record-breaking success was built almost entirely on the back of one player. Without her, the whole thing looked shaky. This year's All-Star Game was only the second time the WNBA had a player with real superstar presence. Normally, these games feel like a celebration of names fans barely recognize. Clark was different. She brought hype, energy, and attention the league hasn't seen before. But here's the thing, her injury wasn't some fluke. It was the result of months of physical punishment that the league refused to address. From the moment she entered the league, Clark has been targeted with excessive physicality that referees consistently ignored. Opponents learned they could body check her, slap her, shove her, and the refs would swallow the whistle. How did we get to an all-star game in Indiana where Caitlin Clark wasn't healthy enough to play? It started last season when she absorbed 20% of the league's flagrant fouls. Most of them came from players like Angel Reese of the Chicago Sky. These weren't basketball plays, they were blatant hacks. And what made it worse? They laughed about it. On national TV, players got up laughing after fouling Clark hard, mocking the moment, mocking the refs, and mocking the league's silence. In any other profession, this would be assault. On a basketball court, it was somehow acceptable that her coach, Stephanie White, saw it coming all season long. She's been vocal, calling out the refs for allowing a different standard of physicality when it comes to Clark. There's a level of contact she has to deal with that other players don't. White said, "I knew it when I coached against her, and now I see it every night." This wasn't an exaggeration, it was a fact. Game after game, Clark was getting beat up, and the officials kept looking the other way. White admitted they were trying to find ways to help her adjust, but the league itself had failed to protect its biggest asset. Even White pointed out that the league's physicality has hit levels she hasn't seen in years. Let's stop sugarcoating it. Clark wasn't just sidelined by a growing strain. She was taken out by months of unchecked abuse, enabled by weak officiating, and ignored by the league office. And now, the result of that neglect was on full display in Indianapolis. The WNBA's biggest stage, with its brightest star missing, not because of a fluke, but because of repeated failure. The league had a chance to protect its future, and it fumbled it. The economic collapse of All-Star Weekend wasn't random. It was the direct result of a league that didn't protect the one player who changed everything. What was supposed to be Caitlin Clark's coronation week in Indianapolis has spiraled into a full-blown nightmare for the WNBA. The city went all in, putting up a massive 34-story banner of Clark on the JW Marriott, expecting record-breaking attendance and huge revenue. Instead, they got empty seats, ticket resale chaos, and fans boycotting the All-Star Game in protest. Everyone's asking the same question. How did the league manage to turn the biggest star's hometown celebration into a financial disaster? And what did WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert finally say about the officiating mess that defined All-Star Weekend? The answer to that exposes everything wrong with how the league treats the very players responsible for its growing popularity. When you arrived in Indianapolis, there was no mistaking who the weekend was about. That banner of Caitlin Clark on the JW Marriott, 34 stories tall, the biggest ever on that building, dominated the skyline. The message read, "From downtown, in my town." It was a moment that screamed legacy. Local businesses were all in, stocking up and staffing up. The city even installed an all-star replica court at the airport. Tickets sold out within hours. The get-in price hit $121, with resale averages soaring to $262. The best seats? Thousands of dollars, easily the most expensive WNBA All-Star game in history. But then, on July 17th, everything changed. Clark's groin injury was announced on social media, and the market responded immediately. Within hours, those $262 resale tickets crashed to $64, a 75% collapse. Sellers were in panic mode, desperately offloading tickets for less than half price. The resale market turned into a fire sale, and even at rock-bottom prices, buyers weren't biting. This wasn't a slow decline. This was a financial crash, playing out in real time. Fans openly said they only bought tickets to see Clark, and without her, they were done. "I booked travel just to see Caitlin Clark play in the All-Star game," one post read. "Now I don't even want to go." The WNBA saw this all unfold, and it gave them a cold, hard look at Clark's true value to the league. And what made it worse? This pattern wasn't new. When Clark missed regular season games in May with a quad strain, ticket prices in cities like Washington and Chicago plummeted 47% and 71% drops respectively. But that was the regular season. This was All-Star Weekend in her hometown. The crash this time, unprecedented. Gainbridge Fieldhouse, which had been sold out for almost 2 straight years of fever home games, was now facing its first empty seat disaster. Merch vendors, restaurants, hotels all were left scrambling. The expected windfall was turning into a widespread loss. Let's be honest, this wasn't just about one missing player. Fans were sending the clearest possible message: Clark is the draw, and without her, the product just isn't the same. Other injured stars don't cause the ticket market to collapse. But with Clark out, the demand tanked. The illusion of league-wide parity and popularity shattered. This wasn't just unfortunate, it was a red flag. The WNBA's entire record-setting season had been riding the Clark wave. Without her, the momentum flatlined. Even worse, Clark's injury wasn't a freak accident. It was the predictable result of months of physical punishment that refs refused to call. Since day one, players figured out they could shove, grab, and foul Clark with zero consequences. The league turned a blind eye. In her rookie season, Clark absorbed 20% of all flagrant fouls in the WNBA, most of them from Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky. And they weren't just fouling her. They were mocking her, laughing about it, celebrating it. This wasn't basketball, it was sanctioned targeting. Stephanie White, Clark's head coach, saw it coming. She called out the double standard multiple times, warning that Clark was being officiated differently. And the data backs her up. The league let it happen night after night. No whistles, no protection. Just physical punishment that built up to one inevitable moment: Clark breaking down with a groin injury right before the league's biggest weekend. The Washington Post even published a scathing report on the officiating crisis, calling the WNBA's refereeing second-rate, and joking that the league's new logo should be a bruise with the slogan, "No call." It was brutal but accurate. Highlights showed Clark being hooked on drives, held off screens, hacked on jumpers, and the refs just stood there. Meanwhile, Indiana Fever players like Aaliyah Boston were getting hit with touch fouls for far. This is the kind of imbalance that makes fans furious. Other leagues protect their stars. The WNBA, they let Clark get hammered, and the damage doesn't end at the stat sheet. Since 2022, there have been 57 head and neck injuries in the league. Guards and wings Clark's position are especially vulnerable. WNBA legend Lisa Leslie warned about groin injuries, calling them long-term and tough to shake. She got one in 2006 and says it still flares up today. That's what Clark's dealing with now, a lingering injury caused by the league's failure to act. When Clark went down, everyone waited to see how Commissioner Kathy Engelbert would respond. This was her moment to lead, to show she understood the gravity of the situation and take accountability for the league's failures. Instead, she delivered a textbook corporate non-answer. She talked about productive meetings with players. She spoke vaguely about officiating improvement and shared goals. But not once did she directly address the refs who let Clark get assaulted all season. Fans weren't buying it. They didn't want sanitized executive speak. They wanted action. They wanted refs held accountable and the league to finally protect its stars. Instead, they got spin. While fans boycotted and businesses faced financial losses, Engelbert spoke about maintaining team profitability and constructive dialogue. The disconnect couldn't be clearer. The commissioner's response poured gasoline on the fire instead of putting it out. And here's the part that fans won't forget. While the All-Star game was collapsing, while ticket prices were tanking and the building was half empty, the league tried to distract from the disaster. They leaned into gimmicks like a 4-point shot and glorified layup lines. The game was unwatchable. No defense, no effort. Just meaningless chucking from beyond the arc. One media outlet called it a scrimmage with music. The entire event was supposed to be the season's crown jewel. Instead, it felt like a preseason exhibition with nothing at stake. Then came the viral moment that overshadowed the game itself. The New York Liberty mascot was caught recruiting Clark during All-Star weekend. That's right, a mascot making a pitch to. Clark got more attention than the All-Star game, and the Liberty weren't subtle. Their stars, Breena Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, and coach Sandy Brondello, all joined in. The message was clear. They understand how valuable Clark is, and they're ready to treat her like it. This All-Star game was the WNBA's first true test without Caitlin Clark, and they failed miserably. Without her energy, presence, and draw, the league couldn't maintain momentum. The disaster exposed just how reliant the WNBA is on one generational player to drive interest. And worse, it showed that the league still doesn't understand how to protect what matters most. The takeaway? The WNBA had everything: fan interest, record viewership, media buzz, and they blew it. By refusing to protect Clark, by pretending officiating wasn't an issue, and by delivering a tone-deaf corporate response in the middle of a crisis, they turned a golden opportunity into a cautionary tale. The only question now is, will the league learn anything? Or will they keep ignoring the warning signs until there's nothing left to save? Let us know what you think in the comments. Was this a turning point for the WNBA or just the beginning of the end? If you believe in real basketball and want honest coverage, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We've got more breakdowns coming soon.